Hello everyone, this is Julia. Thank you so much for joining me today. This time I'm making a summer themed pop-up box card, and I'm actually using a shadow box die to create my little box card. I love getting more bang for my buck, so using a die set in many different ways is so fun. So if you would like to see how to do that, then just keep on watching. First, let's go over all of the products that I'm using. I'm using a little shellfish for the little star and also for the sentiment. A long time no see, which I think is super cute. And then I'm using the Oceans of Love for the little seaweed and the seashell as well. Then I'm using Otter Side for, again, the little seashells and the stars. Then you go Gull for the buoy and, of course, the cute little seagulls. And finally, Sealy Friends for the adorable little seals. For my dies, for the box, I'm using the Heffy Doodle Big Shadow Box, and I'm actually turning this into a box card instead of a shadow box, so stay tuned if you want to see how I do that. Then I'm using the Imperial Stitched Rectangles, the third largest size, to create the stitched panel for the background and also the sentiment strip on the front. And for the inserts for the little shelves, I'm using the Breaking Waves border dies, just to create the little wave edges. Then I'm also using the adorable little bluebird and the Heffy Doodle mini die cutting machine. It just always cracks me up when I open it, it's so cute. I stamped out all of my images onto Bristol smooth cardstock from Strathmore, and I'm using my Zig Clean Color Real Brush markers to color them in. For my first gray, I'm using the marker 90, and then I'm blending that out with 904 just for a little bit of a lighter gray. Off to the side, I have a piece of Bristol smooth cardstock just to wipe off my brush and also my colorless blender, just so that I don't drag too much of the dark color into the lighter areas. I'm only showing the coloring of one of the little seals because I used the same color combination for all of them, and for the cheeks I also used a little bit of the marker 200. I'm just blending the colors back and forth until I'm happy with the result, just coloring in the little nose and also adding a little bit of pink to the mouth. Then I'm going in with a color 44, which is a green, like a sea green shade, and then I'm just blending that out with a colorless blender. I just try to keep the coloring fairly simple, not wanting to use a lot of colors and markers. Then I'm going in with an orange, which is 52, and then also the color 50, which is more of a bright orange, and then 23, which is like a super bright reddish orange. Then I'm also coloring in the, I think it's like coral. I'm not sure what the word for that is, but I'm also using the orange combination, and I love with Zig or any watercolor markers or water-based markers that you can ink blend any kind of shade together and create like a color fade, and it's just super simple and easy to do. I always struggle doing that with like Copic markers because they're, for me, a lot harder to blend. So I really enjoy the watercolor or water-based markers this currently. Then I'm also using the 904 to add a little bit of shading to the seagulls. I wanted to keep them mostly white, so I just added a little bit around the edges and then blended that out with a colorless blender. And then I'm also bringing in the orange markers for the feet and the beaks. The rest of the images I colored off camera, but I used the same color combinations like I already mentioned. Then I used the insert pieces from the big shadow box, and I die cut those 4 times out of Bristol smooth cardstock. And now I'm just using the heavy memo tape and the Breaking Waves borders to add like a little, what is it called? Like a C edge to all of my little insert. And off to the side on the bottom, this piece that I'm currently using, I actually did some partial die cutting on it so that it's a bit longer, because this is the piece that will go onto the background of my box card, and I wanted this to be up a bit higher. Just running that through my die cut machine, and my mat keeps shifting because it's like cardstock on the back, so it's not the fault of the die cutting machine that my mat keeps shifting. Now I'm using faded jeans and broken china for my ocean colors. I'm just adding a little bit of the broken china from the top, and then going in with the darker faded jeans from the bottom, just to have a little bit of a gradient there. Just blending the colors back and forth, and I did the rest off camera, but I used the exact same color combination. Then I wanted to use this salvaged patina. I love this color. It's such a pretty like greenish teal. And I paired it with squeezed lemonade and spiced marmalade. To be fair, the squeezed lemonade gets covered up mostly. I should have ink blended it a little bit higher than I did, but it's fine. I mostly wanted to see the orange with a teal, so it's all good, but next time I would ink blend the yellow a little bit higher. I'm just going back and forth, not blending the teal too much into the orange so that the colors don't get muddy. And now I'm adding lots of shimmery splatters to the background. I use the stitched imperial rectangles, and I just cut a strip of it and then ran it through the die cut machine again to get the stitching all the way around. And then I just sent my sentiment from a little shellfish, and I'm also adding with my water spray just lots of little water splatters, and I'm using a paper towel just to dry those up. Now it's time to work on our box. So I die cut the main piece of the big shadow box die twice out of Nina Desert Storm cardstock, and I'm cutting one piece down to 2 inches, and I'm also trimming off a little bit of the flap. For our second piece, we want to keep the back piece full-sized. So again, I'm lining it up at 2 inches, and I'm cutting it down to the second score line from the flap, just using my paper trimmer as a guide. And then I'm just lining up the score line and trimming off the excess. And I'm also trimming off the edge. And this is how you would create a regular box card with the big shadow box die. And now I really wanted to add the little like angled sides. So I drew in a pencil line that goes from the first score line to the second from 2 inches to 1 inch. And I'm just lining that up and trimming it down from the first score line to the second. And then I'm lining the piece up at 1 inch, and I'm trimming off the rest. And for a second piece, I'm just lining up the pencil line again and trimming it off. There you can see it's down from 2 inches to 1 inch. Since I'm adding the white sentiment banner to the front, I also wanted to add white pieces to the sides. You can see the measurements on screen just for reference. I just cut them down basically by eye so that there's about 1/8 of an inch border all the way around. Just adding them down using liquid glue. And I'm also adding the sentiment strip, and I always find it easiest to just go ahead and add those while the box is not assembled yet, because then you can really press down and adhere them nicely, but you can also always do it later. Now I'm folding along all of the score lines that the big shadow box die created. And I need to be really careful because the cardstock I'm using is fairly thin, but I really like the color of it, so I decided to just go with it anyway. But when folding the score lines, I needed to be really careful. Then I'm adding a little bit of Bluebird to the one flap piece, and I'm lining that up with the back of the box. Just making sure the side and the bottom is lined up nicely. Giving it a little bit of time to dry. Then I'm adding in my background piece, and the stitched rectangle is a little bit longer than the box, so just trimmed off the bottom because that piece you won't be seeing anyway. The splatters weren't completely dry, so just used a paper towel to press it down. I accidentally shifted it a bit, but the glue is still movable, so it was all good. Then I'm also adding the wave piece. I just trimmed off the little flaps on the side, and I'm just adding that to my background. Making sure that it doesn't get in the way of the flaps folding over. Then I'm adding in the little wave shelves to the edges of my box, and I'm just using the angle of the box as a guide. I'm just trying to line them up so that they're a little bit staggered. This is what I really like about the angled box card, because I just think that it gives a lot of dimension when you have them staggered and not just behind each other. Then I'm just flipping them over to the left, and there you can see I accidentally adhered it a little bit crooked, so I just lined them all up straight. Then to close the box and to finish the mechanism, I just flipped over all of the wave pieces, added some liquid glue to all of the flaps, and I'm just going over it with my finger just to make sure that there's no liquid glue oozing out, because that would actually glue the box shut. Holding that shut with my one hand, adding glue to the last flap, and then just folding it shut. And then I just put something heavy. I used the mini die cutting machine, which is perfect, so that it had time to dry and that my box would be nice and sturdy. And there you can see all the dimension from the angled edge. Off camera, I just fiddled around with the placement of all my cute images, and now it's time to adhere everything. I always find that it's easiest to just fiddle around with it until you're happy, because once you glue it down with liquid glue, you're kind of stuck with it. And if you ever have trouble lining it up, some of the pieces, I use either removable tape runner or just a little bit of the glue dots, just to hold them in place temporarily until I'm sure that this is where I want them, because with box cards, images keep moving around a lot. I'm just adding the little seagull to the buoy, and I initially wanted to add them to the background, but then I changed my mind because I thought that it would add a lot more dimension on the last little shelf in the box. And I'm adding this little cutie that's just peeking his head out, which is just so adorable. Adding the second seagull to the background. And then I just added lots of little scene building elements, the seagrass, the coral. Is that coral? Let me know, please. I would like to know what it's called. Adding lots of stars and little seashells also at the base of the buoy. I just kept adding lots of little accessories to the little shelves just to make sure that the scene is filled up nicely, and also made sure that I checked different angles so that when you look at the box from the sides that there would also be things to look at. And that finishes off my little pop-up box card. I really had so much fun making this, and I do hope you liked the video and that it was helpful. I love interactive cards. How about you? What is your favorite kind of card to make? Leave it in a comment down below. I would love to know. And if you have any suggestions or ideas for future videos, just leave them down below as well. I'm happy to try something else out. Thank you so much for joining me today. Give the video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. It really helps out my channel. And I hope I'll see you next time. Until then, have an amazing day. Bye!